watching.
Wait, let's prime people. Don't just drop it. Don't just go there. So, should I do it, or did you want to prep it up, or
I've got no prep. I was just going to drop it like a bomb, baby.
Yeah. See, you got to prep people for this. So, and it's what makes it even okay. So I'll just drop. I think my kit in the basement is no more. Funny, only this morning to live that long with a laptop and never to officially christen it with a name. It was only in our convo this morning, calling it Clank. Any of the peeps out there familiar with and there's a late 90s PlayStation video game, Ratchet and Clank. Clank was the little surly robot that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. So Clank, I think this might be goodbye.
May he rest in peace, Clank.
Yeah. So just before we hit record, it's like at one point, and I have been this guy repeatedly. At one point, I'm the guy that's like, I'm gonna fix you. Like, we're gonna sort of like figure this out. I'm gonna go on the forums. I'm gonna tweak it. I'm gonna adjust it. I'm gonna do all the stuff that kind of could bring Clank back to life. But dude, I don't know if I'm that guy anymore. It actually, two of the restarts this morning happened with you. The one happened when I first booted it up. So, really, am I in need? Do I need to go back in and breathe life back into this thing?
Well, and I was saying to you when we were talking about this right before we started that it's okay not to be that guy anymore. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
People shift, people change. Man, I've only known you, well, I don't know how many years I've known you now, probably 4. But I've only ever known Clank, right? Like your kit in the basement, it was your place. I feel like Clank's in the ICU. He's not officially gone yet, but I mean, you're talking like it's over. I don't know. I'm a little bit disappointed because it's a Mac, and and you and I have talked about this. My perception, Apple has done a wonderful job of selling their products and building up the reputation of their products. Because when you told me Clank was a Mac, my jaw dropped. Because for me, Apple computers don't do what your computer's doing. Like, your computer's acting like a PC. It's not acting like a Mac. But anyway, maybe that's just all like perception. I have no idea. But may Clank rest in peace when he's officially gone.
Yeah.
It's good to have you, though. I'm glad that you had a backup plan.
Well, now I'm on my board-based technology. So this is the lightness of the room is the other space. This is one of the upstairs bedrooms. That's my office during distance learning. So that's where we're on right now. Using the camera on the laptop, using the earbuds that I found on a walk 2 years ago, just out on the side of the path, and they're still kind of working. But it's funny, it's like, so on here on the iPhone, it's all about the lightning connector, right? And then downstairs, it's all about the USB connectors. Like, everything is ported into the laptop with USB stuff. And I have a USB hub that I can connect into it. So I have the big mic and I have the webcam. Here, it's like old school. It's it's a little bit of a hybrid. So there's some USB, there's some HDMI, because I have a separate monitor just off to the side here that is bigger than the actual, what is it? It's a Dell laptop. And then I have the old microphone jack. So these are the old school plug-in microphone jack. I will say, though, it has a nifty little slider volume here, and that's the headphone. And then there's a button here, which I'm not quite sure what it does. I'm not quite sure. Tell me if it mutes me when I'm talking blah 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 blah.
You are not muted.
So I don't know what it does. There's a button. There's a button on it.
Just blabbing, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's probably the title of this episode.
Blah, blah, blah. Well, we
blah, 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 or Clank is dead. It's one or the other.
Just Clank. That's the sound. That's the sound, right? Clank, that's the sound of tech, of having to move on.
I hope that whatever you draw today, I know that you like to connect it to what we talk about in the episode, but I really hope that Clank, there's some kind of mechanical portion to your drawing. Like, I have a vision of like mechanical looking, futuristic type. It's hard to explain. Anyway, we'll see what you create. So you brought up distance learning. So I'm going to tell you, yesterday of the 8 days of teacher-led learning for me that's been official, yesterday was the worst day, which is horrendous because I woke up yesterday feeling and thinking like it was going to be the best day of my 8 days.
Stoked.
I felt like I had achieved like a balance in what I was assigning for my students to do. There was something kind of heavy, something light. The two would balance each other out. They'd be in and out and done in an hour. No, that's not what happened. And here's the worst part of it is I can't tell you the full story because what I want to say is not appropriate. The feelings I want to relay to you are not they're not professional.
NSFW.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm okay to say that. I'm okay to say that. I'm allowed to think what I want. My behaviors, the way I act on my thinking, that's where you get yourself into trouble. But it was not a good day. And I left yesterday feeling I was like, do I really have to keep doing this until the end of this? I know what the answer is, and I'm not going to quit, obviously, but I was just like, man, I was done. I was so done with yesterday. But moving on, Monday will be better. And it was interesting. This whole experience has been very interesting, and it's starting to. I was talking to you about learning more about me on this life journey, and yesterday was a great piece of learning for me and about who I am, and about things I can change or want to change about myself, and things that I'm not going to change about myself because I don't want to. I had this great conversation, this little back and forth with Brad Schreffler yesterday. Brad has a podcast called The Planning Period, and he lives in Florida. He's a good dude. I know you've met him face to face.
We did tacos.
You did tacos when you were in Florida, and I like Brad as a guy, and I like Brad as a podcaster. So he's like a brother podcaster, brother teacher. He's a good dude in like all the ways I know him. And he said that he was listening to the episode of the podcast where I went kind of deep with my experiences around reading and my experiences in school. And he was sharing his perspective on that episode of the podcast. And I was saying to him, the aftermath of that episode of the podcast has been interesting to me. It's opened up some doors that I've not opened up in a very long time. And it's one of those things, and I'm going to try to explain it in a way that you can visualize. It's like you're walking down a hallway, the same hallway every day, the hallway like upstairs of your house kind of thing. And there's like, in my mind, I'm living in a mansion. There's like 50 doors. And every day I walk past that door. And I know it's there. I know what's behind the door. And I just choose to walk past and ignore the door every day. There's no reason for me to go in. And then when we did that podcast, I opened that door. And I think I said something in the episode like, oh, here we go. Like, I know where this is going to take me. And I've not gone there in a long time. And I don't even want to, but I'm going to. And so I went to a place that brought back, obviously, lots of memories, lots of emotions and stuff. And my concern about not opening the door is all the things that get attached to those emotions and those reflections. You don't come out of that room unscathed. And that's why I never went in, because I knew coming out, I was going to come out different. And this time I've decided I'm coming out and I'm going to deal with it in a different way. And so I was talking to Shref about my awareness of, I went in and I'm out now, but I'm not just closing the door and walking away. I'm closing the door and I'm going to deal with what came out of that room with me. And so part of that were my reflections yesterday, because I was talking to Shref and thinking about it and not having such a great work day, reflecting on who I am, what I'm about, and trying to come to peace with certain parts of me and who I am. And some of that is like I have a black and white perspective on life. I don't do well with gray, but I'm coming to the point where it's like, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay with gray. And it's okay to know that gray's still going to exist, even though it's not been something that I've kind of worked with or wanted to work with my whole life. So, for example, one of the things that threw me off yesterday was a form the staff had to fill out for our administrators. And as I tell this story, I'm not laying blame anywhere. I'm just talking about my comfort with black and white spaces, and how sometimes if I don't land in a black or white space, it causes me difficulty. So we have to fill out this form. And the form originally was for one purpose, but literally in the middle of the day yesterday, it morphed into something else. And so I sent a message to my administrator saying, I'm usually on top of these things, and even now I'm confused. And not only am I confused, this is eating up valuable time for me during this day as I'm making calls to families, as I'm troubleshooting the technology with some of my kids, and as I'm dealing with information from my parents and my students that they don't understand the learning. They don't know what to do. So it was one of those days. And I said to my administrator, I'm usually on top of these things, and even I'm feeling like I'm going to turn this off and walk away, and you're not going to get the information that you're asking me for, because I don't know anymore what you want from me. Right? I was seeking the black and the white. So I responded with a very black response. There was no gray in my email to my administrator. But to their credit, they responded and said, thank you for the feedback. I'm going to deal with this. And then about a short time later, the staff got an email from the administrator saying, for anybody who's confused, this is what I want in that form. We'll deal with all the other things that you think that this form is for, but right now, this is all I want. So I went into the form, I changed the information I inputted, because it was no longer what was being looked for. So I get that we're all in transition right now, 100%. I get there are not a lot of answers to our questions about this whole remote distance emergency learning that's happening. I get it. My issue is that I'm trying to do the best I can do to help the people under my care. That's all. And I had to walk away after my time was done yesterday. I walked away and I left it alone. But the thinking hasn't stopped, right? The reflection hasn't stopped. And that's good, because what I'm doing is I'm grabbing that and I'm going with it. So my wife made a comment about yesterday. She didn't have a good day either, work-wise. And then I made a point of saying that, yeah, yesterday was horrible, but we have 2 days off, and Monday we'll get back to kicking butt and it'll be better. I've always had a hard time dealing with that part of me, the black and white, even though I know it and it brings me comfort. I realize that in the world and in life, there's lots of gray, and you have to be open to the gray. And so I'm going to choose when I'm open to the gray and when I'm not open to the gray. That doesn't mean that I'm never going to enter into it. I have to enter into it because it's life. I don't have to like it. I just have to learn how to work with it. And that's okay. But the funny thing is that I've been living my life like this for 43 years. And I've never, some people might say, well, why don't you just change? Well, no. You know why? Because I've never honored the way I really am. So I refuse to change with this because I've never honored it. So I need to sit with it and actually honor it and give it some power before then I can decide I don't like it, I'm going to change it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's very, because people are always changing, and I've done a lot of things and I've changed my way. But with this one, I think I'm going to sit with this one for a bit. I think this is coming from the door that was open during that podcast episode. And because I was open to going into the room and coming out with baggage, now I'm going to deal with the baggage. And part of that baggage is the black and white perspective, but living with it for a little bit and actually honoring it and saying it's there and it sits right here beside me. And then if you want to twist it a little bit more, this is part of I wasn't ready to do this because I hadn't read Brene Brown's stuff about vulnerability and shame. And so if it wasn't for that, I may not be experiencing this now. And I don't feel weak now. I feel actually strong. Like, as I talk to you about this, I feel like it's like a matter of fact. It's rational, right? It's not emotional, but even with the emotions that come with having opened that door, it's good. I'm literally, my hands are wide open and I'm kind of letting it come at me. And so it's just really cool. And it goes to show how the different parts of your psyche and your life and your world and the way you operate, it all truly is connected. It is. You may not see it that way, or you don't want to see it that way, and that's okay. But I'm feeling like I'm making connections left, right, and center. I would never be able to say this stuff if it weren't for the reading and the work I was doing with shame and vulnerability, and then going back into that room and talking about those things from school, and then having people respond to me. So I've had people, so you and I have talked about it. Shout out to Will Gourley, who reached out and talked to me about it. Shref, like, people are acknowledging what they heard, and they're kind of sharing their perspective. And I appreciate that, because that's part of the cool thing about doing the podcast and about pushing it out, is that sometimes people will talk about the stuff you talked about. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just wanted to, I don't even know where we started, but I wanted to put that together, and I made some pretty cool connections there. And have you had like a rough patch yet?
Yeah, I think that, so going into this, it's funny, you're mentioning Brene as kind of a lead, part of the lead to untangling the bigger picture you and the stuff. I think the stuff that, some of the stuff that you've experienced with the daring to lead and the vulnerability, learning is also like, it was setting the soil for working through distance learning. Like, right, if we're sort of like taking in and using, and then you put the next layer on, so you're sort of building layers of understanding and self-awareness, and then a challenge like this pops in, and then you have different ways to think about it, different ways to kind of tease it apart, different ways to kind of put it under the microscope, and then different ways to step way back and look at it at a distance. And I think that for me, some of that I've mentioned to you that I'm starting to like. I have a current fascination with the Stoics and Stoicism, and you and I have had several conversations through text about, and probably even on past episodes, you know, me asking questions about your spiritual beliefs and how Catholicism is kind of wound into your day, how that connects with the kids. You've mentioned it as far as connecting with the leadership framework. So I'm fascinated with how these facets kind of like weave themselves into each other. And, you know, I don't have a firm religious practice to sort of ground me. I was born into Catholicism, but sort of parted ways when I was in my early teens. So I don't have any lessons or learning to sort of fortify me right now and have me think about current situation with my family, current situation with school, how those overlap, being a man, being a father, being a person, these other layers of identity that sometimes are magnified in moments of challenge. And I came across, I don't know how it was brought to me. It was maybe something mentioned in a podcast. Some dots were connected, and a couple different quotes were pushed my way from this dude, Marcus Aurelius. And they kind of stuck in my head. And usually for me, if stuff echoes, then it becomes my inquiry. So, and then I tend to action it. So if I have a passing interest in something and it just doesn't come back to me the next day or the second day, then I kind of like, okay, that was just a short-term thing. Not to say that I don't become impulsive in pursuing stuff, but the quotes that were shared with me kept on coming back to me. And then it made me just want to take one step deeper and look into, well, what's the backstory here? So in looking into it, and I'm not even toe deep into it, the moments that I've had where I'm thinking to myself, what I'm going through right now, I'll make it specific to working through distance learning. I find I immediately deal with what's in front of me, try and fix what's in front of me if I'm doing support with a kid online or having some Google meetup where we're trying to hash through what's the next step. Like sort of, I feel like the biggest challenge for me so far has been the hyper focus on what's in front of me and then looking to sort of bounce myself way out into sort of almost like a galactic view. And I think that the way that some of the news is being framed and the way the different feeds are being framed, that tends to be like there's some really crazy elasticity there where you're right up at the page having to deal with some really intense stuff, maybe, you know, working through a lesson with a kid, and in the conversations you find out the stuff isn't going so great for the kid. And then you're sort of faced with the working through the kid and their anxiety or their unhappiness or their challenges with the content. And then all of a sudden you get off the call and you're all the way out in the big picture again and thinking to yourself, how do I recognize that this is probably a common feeling, like a lot of my kids are kind of feeling this, and then taking this big wide view, what are the resources that I need to get to? And then all of a sudden you kind of go, you're like right in on those resources. And then the biggest challenge then is connecting those dots, because even though you get this nice big view of all the different things that are available in the school board to help out a kid that's not really connecting well with distance ed, when you step out like this, you can see the short distance between those 2 points. Like you can actually step in and be like, oh, there's the resource I need. There's the kid. But the truth of it is that distance between there sometimes, like there's a lot of barriers. You can't always get that resource that's out here because you've got this wide view across to the kid. And I think that right now has been one of the biggest tensions for me. You know, getting a kid connected with the guidance team, getting the kid connected with the student success team, getting the kid connected with the librarian, the whole zoom in to sort of work directly with the kid like this online. But the zoom out and seeing the actual distance between the kid and the resources has been pretty mind-blowing to me. And it's popped up when I go professional learning on it. That's some of the questions that I've been asking to Twitter. Like I think we talked about last week, like, what is the job description that we're kind of writing or rewriting right now? The other conversation I was in yesterday was about COVID associated or COVID themed assignments. Another Twitter conversation that I was in was talking about when we think about committees that are school-based right now, what is it that we need to start immediately rejigging with the committees and workshops and how our groups and teams are connected if we're moving into a new hybrid model of education? So yeah, it's the thing that really right now is the biggest tension, is that constant zooming between little picture and big picture. And if I tie it back to some of, I started talking about the Stoics, one of the tools that, and I don't have the language, it's either a tool, a concept, a strategy. But anyways, it's being able to zoom out enough that you can find some sort of a personal balance, a personal sort of equilibrium to kind of see the big picture. And then in that big picture, trying to make a rational decision, an educated decision, compassionate, empathetic decision about what you can actually go in, zoom back into the microscope and fix. That pulling is wearing me down. And and I think part of it is the physical distancing. It's the limitation of, we talked about this, how triggered we are with the school day between the bells. You park in a spot, you walk in the door, your day has started. Those key cornerstones and checkpoints in the day are a lot harder to manifest in distance ed. I think teachers are doing an amazing job, educators. I think education is doing a great job of trying to create some of those keystones for kids. What I'm seeing happening is that the rules don't nicely translate. They don't. Sometimes the distance between those 2 points, what's happening between there, is like really unimaginable. Like we haven't quite figured out the sort of like the distance between those two separate points when we're looking all the way zoomed out. We don't have the resources and we don't have the opportunity right now to get there, because we are, I think, for the most part, still focused on developing curriculum. For the most part, lots of great conversations popping up about wellness and what's next, what's now, but that was long.
That's not long, dude. I'm long. That's not long at all.
Did any of it make sense? Did any of that?
It makes sense to me. I totally get it. And now the way you put it about the zooming in, the zooming out, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And when you put it that way, and I consider my experience yesterday, I can see that. I can see a lot of zooming in, a lot of zooming out. I also see a lot of, I put blinders on, and the blinders help me ignore the things on the periphery that I don't need right now. So I got lots of emails yesterday, and I was in between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. My blinders stopped me from seeing the emails from some of my colleagues, some of the system emails, because I was just like, no, I'm not going to do this, because that deviation for me is going to lead to a lack of focus at that particular time that I needed. I needed that focus. I needed to stay in the zone and be in the game, so to speak, so that I could be effective at that moment for the purpose of that moment. And then, after that time is when I was able to look at all this extraneous stuff, and that added to my displeasure of my day, because I felt like I just finished work, if you will, but I'm not finished work. And that's the other thing too. My wife and I were talking about that yesterday, that there are times we just need to shut it down and walk away and just let it go. Because this morning when I woke up, I was like, I'm not checking my email this morning. I just totally do not want to engage. It's Saturday, and I know that my students have handed in work that's living in my Google Drive because it's not stopped since we've started it. And it comes at all different times. Like, it's not, I may walk away from the computer between 3 and 6 to eat and hang out with my family or whatever. But the second I sit down again and open it up, it's all going to be there. And it's different than when we were in the classroom. It's not the same. It's just not the same. It feels like it's here all the time. And it feels like I'm working on it all the time. And I don't even feel like I'm being effective. So add that layer
all the time.
Yeah, add that layer on. It's like I'm working all the time. I don't feel I'm being effective. But I can't stop because I don't want to stop. I want to keep going. I want to keep thinking and prepping and learning. And there's a lot of learning. And I'm not scared to learn. And I'm not scared of the challenges in front of me. I just feel like usually those challenges are when I'm somewhere else and my kid's not sitting beside me. So my son is literally will be sitting at the table. The dining room table has become school at my house. Like, the dining room table doesn't look like a dining room table anymore. It looks like an office for 4 people. There's papers, there's computers, and I'll literally be sitting in one spot. My son will be sitting beside me, and he'll be like, "Hey, Dad, can we do my work now?" And I say, "Yep." And I close my laptop, and he opens his, and we do his work. And then when he's done, he closes his, and I reopen mine, and it's right back. It's right there. Like, it's literally right there in front of me. It's not going anywhere. And it's not like you can take a vacation. There's nowhere to go. So, like, every day my son and I go for a walk. It's not a long walk. It's not a far walk. It's just we get outside. We get some air. It's awesome to just walk side by side with him and listen to him talk.
Mm-hmm.
He's just talking a mile a minute about all kinds of stuff and filling me in on things. And I give him that time. And, you know, something that came up late this week was it seems now that both of my boys are orally expressing their discontent with this situation. They hadn't up till now, but they're starting now. So my youngest is having trouble sleeping. So knowing that, last night, my wife put him to bed. And then about an hour and a half later, I came in and he was just, nightlight was on. He was taking it easy. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Is it okay if I just sit in your room? I'm gonna hang out with my iPad and we can turn off your nightlight. You can like kind of get into bed and get into it, and I'll just sit here," knowing that would ease him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew, because my wife had to do it another night this week where she walked in, he was wired, so she stayed with him and that calmed him down. So rather than let him get wired, I just looked at the time and I'm like, I'm gonna go and sit in his room until he falls asleep. And he was out in like 15 minutes. He just needed something more than what he's been getting all day from us, which is
soothing.
Well, yeah. Because all day it's like, "Oh, do you really need that right now? Because I'm in the middle of this." Or, "Hey, Dad, can we do this now?" And I'm like, "I just need 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
Give me 15, and then we can go do that." Right? Like, I haven't driven my car. I don't remember the last time I drove my car. It's just stuff like that that's starting to sink in. And if it's affecting the kids, then I feel like we need to do something a little bit different. We need to do it different. So I don't know. It's just it seems like this thing's taking a turn. Like, it's evolving within the house. And I know, and then when I think of this for myself, I think of this for my students. If this is happening with me and my kids in my privileged world, what does it look like for some of my kids that are not as privileged as I am?
Mm-hmm.
What's it like for them? I don't know. All I can say is I've had a couple of interesting emails back and forth with parents this week where I've said, "Why don't you just leave this alone for now and come back to it later?" Like, I don't want to say don't do it. I don't want to say that I feel like it's not professional, but at the same time, I'm not going to say to them, you must do this either. Like,
see, it's funny. Sorry, I think we're.
Go ahead, spit it out, man.
I was going to say, I think we're creeping up at that point, though. Like, I think that's what is so kind of frustrating about feeling the limitations of our fluency, which in professional language, because our hearts, I think, are saying, don't do it. Don't do the work. I had to assign it. Don't do the work. I had to cut it back, but don't do the work. Like, I feel like that's a conversation that is kind of ringing in some educators' ears right now. But you're right. Like, to say that, like that could be cataclysmic to actually sort of spew that one. But I think in some cases, I remember back in the days of me doing, even before Access, when I did that, working with the students on suspension and expulsion. Before that, I was doing alt ed. So alternative education, every kid brings their selection of courses. So you could potentially be teaching 16 different courses during one period. It was my original crash course in blended learning, because I was using vertical learning spaces. Like, I was using whiteboards, I was using tablets, I was using a computer, I was using paper, chalkboard. We even got chalkboard. We started with chalkboard. It got converted afterwards into whiteboards in the classroom. So it was like multimodal, multi-directional. So students that were connected with my program, often I would go to an intake meeting or a student success meeting. And because it was a board-based program, we could have students referred to our school, because at the time, what they had done, there was a intermediate and senior version of alt ed at a school nearby. And what they did was the board wanted to have alternative education offerings in every single school. So instead of rolling it out where they say, okay, you can do intermediate and senior, as in you could do grade 9 and 10 courses and grade 11 and 12 courses, the other program they split in half, and they left the senior programming there, and they brought the intermediate programming to my school. So I was servicing grade 9 and 10 students. My colleague was working with senior students. Now, at the time, just a quick sidebar, by splitting it, it didn't create equitable access. It wasn't like the students could get from my program over to the other school to do the other. They never worked out. It so rarely worked out. I tried to set it up where the student could be shared between two high schools, which can be done. And I had set up in the past for other students in a different circumstance, where they could do sort of like the mornings at one school and then the afternoons at another school. And this is kind of like old school chatter that I'm throwing your way, talking with Stephen Hurley, talking about micro-credentialing, talking about using the school board as a campus. School board as campus, not school board as a collection of individual silos. Which, by the way, it almost feels like a school board is a campus now, isn't it? Like, we're in this weird kind of digital space. But back to what I was talking about. So when we did these intake meetings, and students would, we would have, admin at my school would be there. Sometimes I'd be talking with the other admin. They'd be on the conference call. Sometimes the parent would be in with us. On more than one occasion, when someone in the group was talking about how this particular student, they needed their 4 credits because they needed to be a full-time student. 4 credits, full-time student, 4 credits, full-time student. I'd back up and I'd say, and I would say this to the group, is curriculum really what this kid needs? Now, this isn't a new statement. I think teachers have been saying that or thinking that or really feeling that for a while. But I really feel like it's coming to fruition, like it's blooming now. This idea that curriculum is not what kids, or it's not necessarily what kids need. And when you all of a sudden zoom way out and take a look at those 2 points and see curriculum and wellness, my God, that distance between the two, it might even be like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like they might even be at different distances. So it's not only this way, it's this way. So right now, this one, we're still on curriculum, but this star off in the distance, I don't even know if you'd see this in the camera right now, but this star off in the distance, like that's even, you have to move forward and over. And I'm hearing again and again, both through digital pathways and just conversations, I'm really worried about this kid. But if we don't know how to get from the kid in the curriculum and the kid in their wellness sort of frame, or we're not having those discussions, that's a bit of a frightening reality, a frightening reality check for me.
Let me paint a picture for you of a couple of situations in my class this week. So, so I still had a few students who had not engaged in any of the learning yet. And then I have a couple of students who are very engaged, whose parents are very able to work with the kids. So yesterday, then I have students who are not engaging but pretending to their parents that they are engaging. So part of what brought problems on yesterday was D-Day. Yesterday was the day that we were reminded that we should be connecting with families of children who are not showing up for school. We were also passing on information to admin about families that we have yet to make contact with. So in the morning, I had a handful of kids that I had not made contact with yet officially. And they weren't engaging either. Halfway through the day, I had made connections. You know, like it's like a miracle. Like I said to my wife, I grabbed the phone and I said, I'm going to make a couple of calls, and I'm not confident at all, but I'm going to make the call. She's like, okay. I made the calls and people answered the phones, and I actually got to talk to the students. And, you know, the students were literally like, where's the work? I've been checking every day. I don't know where the work is. And I'm like, okay. To me, it's obvious where the work is, but I needed to put that aside and I needed to not judge. And I did a great job. I was like, okay, do you know how to get to your school board email? Yes. Perfect. Give me 10 minutes. I'm going to send you a video. You're going to watch the video. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. Okay. They're like, yeah. I'm like, and then write me back so I know you got it. They're like, okay. So I do that. It works. These kids are now on board. They know where the stuff is. So I go from, now this literally happened. I went from these two emails. Email number one, I emailed the parents and I say to the parents, your child has not handed in anything this week. I don't know what's going on. Let me know how I can help. I'm here to help. And it's a fact. I have nothing from them. I have no emails and I have nothing in my shared folder. I don't know what's going on, and I'm notifying you. That's my job today. So I hear nothing from them, and then I get an email from one of the kids that I connected on the telephone whose parents can't talk to me. They don't speak English. So when I call, the minute I didn't even ask for the parent, I asked for the kid. So they answered, and I'm like, this is Mr. Chidiak calling. Can I speak to so-and-so? And I can hear them yelling for so-and-so, like urgently, like, get your rear end of the phone. It's your teacher, you know, which is kind of nice to have that moment of like, hey, I am kind of important in somebody's life, right? So kid gets on the phone. I give the kid instructions. That kid emails me and says, Mr. C, I just looked at such and such work. I have no idea what you want. I don't know what to do. So here's the delicate balance. So I wrote back and I said, don't just look at today's work because today's day 8. Look at day 1 to 7. Find something in day 1 to 7 that you feel comfortable with. That the minute you see what I want, you know exactly what to do because you've done it 100 times already. Go and find one of those and do it. Okay? Kid writes back, okay. Great. As I finish up with that kid, I get the email from this mom saying, my son's not done anything, but he says, I just talked to him. He says every day he's working on it. So I write back and I tell the mom, okay, I'm glad that you had a conversation. I'm glad that he says he's doing it. I'm telling you, it's not in my shared folder. Now, there's a number of things that could happen. Maybe he forgot to share. Who knows? And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm just telling you, this is what I've been asked to do, and I'm doing it. So then a couple of hours later, she hits me up again. She's like, did anything show up? I'm like, yes, things showed up. But it was one of those moments where I wasn't like, that email was at the bottom of my priority list because there was 5 other things that jumped into top queue that needed to be dealt with ASAP. So I wrote back, I said, yes, there's stuff there. I can't look at it now. I will get to it and I will let you know. The other kid emails me and says, okay, I just handed something in. So I check his work and I'm like, right on, well done. You know, I'm thinking of this kid's life. I'm thinking of this kid's situation. I'm thinking of the language barriers. I'm thinking of all the barriers in the way of me reaching this kid. I'm just so happy I now have connection with this kid. So he says, what else can I do? I said, you're going to find one other thing to do and you're done for the weekend. He's like, okay. So he goes off, and I know he can't do half of it. He can do half of it with the right support, but I'm not giving him the right support, so he can't do it. So I'm like, go do what you can. And then this mom emails me. I finally deal with this other mom's email, and I say to her, okay, I got all this stuff. I said, do you want me to give you a list of the things he's not done? She's like, please. So I make a list, and there's a whack of stuff on this list. I'm like, I don't have any of this stuff. She's like, okay. So then she goes and she basically, I don't know what she tells him, but I imagine she tells him, this is all the things you haven't done. You're going to do them. And so then she's like, thank you very much for your time. I'm like, anytime. That's what I'm here for. She's gone. That list is gone. Then this other kid steps in and says to me again, I just tried this. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I tried. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So then I sent a message to a group of students saying, this is what I'm looking for. I don't want perfection. I want you to get in every day, if you can, look at what I want, do what you can of what I'm asking for. Don't pretend because you don't do it, you're not doing anything. I said, that's not happening. If you come in, if you have the time to come in and you have the energy to come in and try to do the work, then you're going to give me something. I don't care what it looks like. I need content so I can provide you with feedback and I can help you move along the way. And I will help you move forward. That might be, for one kid, little itty bitty steps. For another kid, it could be a kilometer. That's the beauty of this whole thing. We're all different. So, you know, my heart goes out to the one kid that's like, hey, I finally figured this out. I've not been messing around. I just didn't know where to go, even though I feel I told them several times where to go.
Yeah.
I made an explicit video and I said, just watch the video. I take you step by step. Just follow what I'm doing in the video. And then I've got a mom who's like, what do you mean my kid's work isn't there? He says he's been doing work every day. I don't have any evidence of that. And until I do, I'm going to have to send you this email saying your kid's not giving me any work. And then here's the other situation. I have some kids that have not done anything. And when I've communicated with the parents, I've not heard back from them. Mm-hmm. They responded for other things, but they're not responding for the emails that say, what can I do to help? Your child is not engaging at all.
Can I jump in on that? So here's this brings to mind that, and I'm having these conversations with my own children. The whole awareness of mind, awareness of organizational structures, and the use of graphic organizers and other organizers to project out, like build out the project for your day. Like I'm working a lot with my own kids as in, okay, here's how you kind of break this one down. Here's how you hold yourself accountable by looking at your day and the amount of time that you have, the things you want to get done, and your resources that you need to get it done. And one of the things that keeps popping up that, you know, for me, like organizing my day is a mixture of these, whole lot of fine tip pens. I had to figure out a new graphic organizer for my day. So I won't show that because there's probably some kid info on there, but basically I use a 4-quadrant. Yeah, I guess you don't have to say. I guess I'll say 4-quadrant. I use a quadrant system. I split my page into 4, and I have to do, wonder, notes, and connect. And I'm constantly filling it, and I'm kind of moving between the things to make sure that I'm collecting on the day. Plus, I also have these, like I have class lists that I've printed out, and I'm checking in, like I have a code system for, have I made contact? What type of contact was it? That I actually have a conversation? So I'm doing my trackers here. And I have an online system. So these are actually, there's no redundancies here. I actually don't have redundancies. There's overlap so that it dovetails from, that there's flow for my workflow, and having to figure that out. I feel like I'm getting through my day. I feel like I do have a grip on the day, but I'm talking to my own kids, and they're not tracking well with communicating on the classroom, then tracking a conversation on email, and then going to watch a video. One of the things that kind of mind blows me about yours and my communication is that any particular conversation that you and I have, and I don't know if this is the same for other people with their friends, you and I will flip from Insta to email to messaging to now we've, sorry, I'm going to say it, playing with the Snapchat thing, playing with that, but we're constant, and then Twitter. And then not only in Twitter, in the general sense, like we're in the same room, then it's Twitter DM. And then it's back out again. And then one of us will call. So we've got this like multimodal frame of, and I feel like I'm losing no ground in conversations with you. I feel like we're sort of, there's a flow to it, but the layers have sort of grown and grown and grown the longer you and I have been friends. I'm really getting the sense, like this is what I'm observing in the students, that they don't have a method to stitch together the digital tools in a way that they hit the flow. So where I started with this, what lit me up in what you said was sending emails home to parents. I believe they most effectively deal with the email that's in front of them when they happen to have their email open. Everything else is secondary. I have a few parents that when we've started conversations about different support systems, they will reply to the thing, as in we're in the middle of a conversation. They don't send a new email. They reply in the body of the email. So there's a nice thread of conversations, but there's so few that even do that kind of a basic communication tool in order to keep ourselves in a narrow hallway. That there's a whole world of, like, it was interesting to me to see offerings in digital spaces for adults to get used to Google tools, recently, because I thought to myself, that's pretty 5.0. My parents they don't need to learn how to use a Google tool. I think more of them need to sort of like start using their email in a way that they can data track and track the conversation and not lose the ball, right? And then also, from the teacher perspective, when you don't get a response, you might do a couple different things, but you're loading up the wagon in a way that it could be a huge burden to the parent. One more email, one more phone call, one more DM, like all these things that are one more on top of a really precarious communication system that is just going to cause an avalanche, because there's one layer in there. There's one layer in there with that key little bit of information somewhere in the middle. And that pressure on it is just going to make everything fall apart. The parents' wellness in this is there's discussions happening. We're aware of it. But I also think in the hunger to sort of try and boost our communication so that we know that we've made contact is crushing some parents too. They don't have the tools, let alone what you introduced, which might be the language barrier. I do have a family where they've redirected me to and given permission to me to talk to an older sibling in order to work with the student that I need to work with. Because parent is working, parent is always mobile, parent isn't necessarily available to help out with this stuff. I think that's what's happening. I know that's what's happening on the other side of the email.
I just feel like at what point is me reaching out harassment? At what point, from their perspective, do they feel like they're being harassed? So I wish that they would just say to me, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, because then because there's an accountability piece, right? So when my admin says to me, do you have any kids in your class who aren't participating? And I say yes, then they're going to say, have you reached out? And I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to tell them when and how. Like, I can't just say, no, I haven't reached out, because then they're going to be like, you're not doing your job. But I wish I could say I reached out on this day and I haven't reached out since because I was told to stop. Mom or dad said, we can't do this right now. So please, please stop emailing us about this.
I have presented that to people. I have had that happen, and the parents have said, we'll reach out when we're ready.
I kind of wish that would happen here, because then I can move on.
Oh, yeah.
And they can move on. Like, trust me, it's not just for their sake. Like, there's a selfish piece to this. If you tell me to back off, you don't want to hear from me until you're ready. Okay, that's one less thing I need to do. I know that may sound callous. I don't mean it that way. I've got a list of stuff to do. I got a list of kids to work with. So if you're telling me now's not the time, you'll reach out to me and let me know when it's time, beautiful. Then I'm just going to take that and park it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you need me, you'll call upon me, and then I will unpark it. But right now, everything's in play because you've not told me to stop. And I'm not telling you to tell me to stop. I'm not playing that game. It's almost like, as a parent, and what I'm saying now, I'm not saying it to try to be rude. I'm just saying, as a parent, you need to step up and do your job as a parent. Tell me if it's stand up for yourself. Tell me. You're the parent. I'm the servant. I'm here to serve. I'm here to do what I can to assist you. And I feel like I'm putting a lot of energy into that. Energy that can be put in other places if you don't want it.
It's a tough balance.
It is a tough balance. And I'm being frank here. I'm being black right now. I'm not playing gray. I feel like I'm playing gray. But in all my emails, and because some parents, I know I kind of have an idea of their life, calling them at home or on their cell phone is not appropriate because of the work they're doing.
Yeah.
But to send an email means that they can read it at their leisure. But I can tell you right now, certain emails I get responses to right away, and the emails about, hey, your kid's not doing anything. Is there something I need to know, or is there something I need to do? I'm not getting any responses to those. And that makes me think that they don't want to respond because they don't know what to say, or they just don't want to say it. They do not want to say that nothing's happening because they don't have the capacity, or they're not there to help, whatever. I don't know what it is. But if they told me, then they'd stop getting those emails and we could all just move on until they're ready to jump in or able to jump in. That's where I'm at, man. That's where I'm at with this whole thing.
I had one conversation with a parent where there was a scheduled check-in, and the student wouldn't come to the phone. Like, it wasn't a check-in with the parent. A lot of my support right now is direct phone call support. So I'm calling, we'll put a document up that we're sharing together they'll give me access, and we can sort of do the commentary together at the same time. We'll do the work at the same time, and then on the phone we're talking about it. Or we use something like Jamboard so that we can do math stuff on the side. And so this was a scheduled support, like resource room support session, and the kid wouldn't come to the phone. And I said to the parent, okay, well, I'm going to call back. I'll call back on Friday, and we'll try again. Same time, keep the exact same schedule. And the parent's like, well, why bother? They're not going to come to the phone. And I said to the parent, I said, you know, I feel like this is one of those moments where we have to be the adults. We have to hold on to the fact that we do know better. We do know better. You know, you as the parent, you have whatever conversations to support your kid, to make them kind of feel good, make them feel supported, make them feel like they can come to the phone. And when I get them on the phone, I'm going to do everything that I can to listen and to support their learning. I said, but I don't want to make the mistake of agreeing to not calling again. I said, I think as us as the adults, we know what is the better step here. So this wasn't a parent that was not willing to support. This was a tired parent. This is a pattern of behavior, sort of like non-compliance with work that's gone on for a while. But it was very much a parent that was saying, well, you know, like, why are we wasting our time on this? And I said, this is an important waste of time. This is why we need to waste this time, because we need to hold firm on the fact that meetings like this are the way to success for your child. So we're going to be the professionals together, and I'm going to call back on Friday, and we're going to try again. And we're going to keep doing this until holding firm on this, because there is nothing else to do. There is no second way. There is no plan B. This is the way that we have available to us right now. And as frustrating as it might seem, and as tiring as it is, in some cases, there is no next plan. There is no what else can we try. There's just holding to the plan so that consistently settles in, takes roots, and eventually, and this is also me knowing the student is slow to accommodate change. So, you know, my best practice at that is just to remain still. Don't move around too much. Don't give a lot of different options. Just hold on to this for a while. Let's get some data to see if we can slowly turn the student towards the opportunity, and then slowly get the student to move towards the opportunity, and then slowly get the student to sit down and participate in the opportunity. And I had that firm conversation with the parents saying, no, we're gonna hold on to this. I'm gonna call on Friday. It's like, okay, Mr. Clough. I'm like, I appreciate your support. Thank you for, you know, making, because this was calling the parent's phone. That's the house phone. It's the parent's mobile phone. That's also a fascinating thing too, eh? Like the home phone numbers. The home phone numbers are the actual one of the parents' mobile phones. So you're calling it. It's like, can I check in with such and such? Like, well, I'm at work right now, and this is the home that we don't have a home line. I carry my home line with me when I go to work. And I think to myself, wow. So the family at home is without a layer of contact as far as a teacher can, you know, the information that we have in the system. Anyways, that's what lit me up about that, is like having to sort of hold that line too with some parents and saying, no, we're going to keep doing this plan. And hopefully we're going to get some success. We're going to get somewhere with it, but it's too early to try something new. We're going to remain still, and we're going to remain steady, and we're going to keep trying to do this. And how, like you said, Friday being a day, that was what made my day on Friday, was the, it's like student success planking, right? It's like that, okay, we're going to do leg lifts. And then it's like, okay, 1 and 2 and 3 and hold. And you have your legs in the air, and you're just like, the legs are starting to kind of shake a little bit. That's what Friday felt like, because I was having so many of these plans that I'm just holding in the air. I'm like, no, I can't drop this plan. I have to hold it. You know, and you're feeling just that burn in the gut. Like, I just wish I could drop this load right now. But that's what Friday was like for me.
What do you think would happen if parents were allowed to opt out of this? What do you think would happen?
I had a conversation with both my children when we were going into this. We've had a lot of conversations. My kids are aware. They have some similar struggles that all students are having. We're doing not the exact same setup as you, only because the bulk of the work that my spouse and I, that Karen and I have to do, are phone calls. So we're constantly on phone calls, constantly on web meetings. Like, so that at the same table with my kids would be like, oh, cool. Like they would want to participate in it, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but our most efficient and supportive way to do it is that Karen and I are each in sort of like offices, and then we're rotating down and checking in on the kids, and then we're coming back up. So we're getting our steps in, basically. So one of the early conversations that we had with the kids going into this was it was expressing our comfort, Karen's and mine comfort, that and this was before we knew anything. This was really before we knew anything, but this is kind of like the big picture. It's like what you and I do on the podcast. Sometimes we have conversations with our kids that are so beyond the current situation, but again, it's zooming way out to that big picture to see what the little fires that could be happening. And one of the conversations we had was, because I think Jake actually asked it, he's like, if they cancel the school year, will I have to do the grade over again next year? And this was some of the early discussions around, and this is what kind of kills me about the discussion right now, where they say they're canceling school, as opposed to saying we're keeping the buildings closed, but school will continue. I wish there was a little bit more differentiation there. But I go back to my story. So Jake asking, if they cancel school, so in his mind, technically he's saying as in we don't go back to school at all, will we have to repeat it? And at that point, I had said we didn't know, because we didn't know how this was going to play out. But both Karen and I said, we're okay with that if you're okay with that. We're not worried about you having to redo some of the school year next year. And then Matt is like, well, what would that look like? I said, I don't know. I said, I just know that I'm not going to place your wellness and stress in primacy over, I'm not going to put it under the primacy of curriculum. So if we're going to try and get stuff done as best as possible. But if it means that, we lose out on part of the year and we have to fix the year, if that becomes the plan, we're okay with that. And both my kids, like, they didn't come away happy from that conversation, like, oh, shoo, the pressure's off. But they did come away kind of understanding that we're kind of holding, like, our success criteria right now is everybody well? Is everyone feeling balanced? Does everyone feel like they can keep doing their best? That's been the benchmark. And I've entered into a couple of those conversations with teachers and parents that are just acting like teachers right now, supporting their kids. And it's that question around, would parents opt out? I think some would. They would opt out if there could be an access point to the conversation around, well, what would September look like then? What would the next look like? Because to opt out right now without a plan, I would say definitely feels dangerous. I think on the inside, as an educator, I can see big picture and say to myself, we could find ways to fix it. Like, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and I believe that we have enough innovative people that we could figure out how the year could be adjusted. Like, what would that mean? Like, I do believe we could figure out fixes, and not only fixes, things that could flourish. Like, there would be cool opportunities. But I think that some parents, yes, if they were, because part of it is that some parents are looking for permission to opt out. They wouldn't do it. Some may do it. Some may do it just as a protest. Forget it. We're not doing this. But I think others are just like, I don't know if we can do this. What's the backup plan? And then I bet you there'd be even some parents they'd be getting on that school council to have discussions around at school level. Okay, so how are we going to fix this next year? And bear in mind, all of these conversations could be happening within a new school model that could happen in September. And I keep falling on the hybrid model, as in we're designing a school experience, a school community, a school life, a culture that takes into consideration what does learning look like when we're in the classroom sometimes and then at home sometimes. Kind of like a hybrid model, which is what I've been more kind of like trying to imagine, trying to see in the big picture, trying to like, what would that look like, a hybrid model?
Very interesting.
Man. Yes.
It's kind of cool to be part of something new and to problem solve it and to troubleshoot it. But man, like there's
as long as you can get out to the big picture, right?
well,
Because if you're like this and people are telling you this is new, this is like, whew.
There's a couple of things that come with that though, right? There's the whole there's going to be lots of you don't start something like this and leave it without scars and bruises, good stories and bad stories. Like this is taking its toll on people. And I guess as we do it, we're trying to figure out how it works in effective ways and finding a balance, but I don't feel any of that's come to me yet. I saw this really cool graphic. It's circular and there's 3 layers. The first layer is something to do with survival. The second layer, I think, is something to do with acceptance. And the third layer is like you're just invested. It's something like that. I'm still in that first circle. I think
I saw that. Was it blue on blue? And it was sort of ovular, sort of kind of
yes.
like, yeah.
I'm still, and I reflected on it. And the author or whoever had posted it, the comment they made was, and it's okay to go back and forth between these layers. So don't think that because you've left the survival layer, like that you're good to go. You can fly through. It just depends on your circumstance, what's happening. And we just finished day 8 and I'm still in survival mode. And here's the other part that's really weighing heavily on me is people are still saying, it's okay. It's only day 8. It's okay. What are they going to say at day 35? When do they stop saying, it's okay, it's only day 35, and they start saying, hey, it's day 35. Why aren't you with this now? This has been weighing heavily on me because it's okay. Day 6, it's okay. Take it easy. Be good to yourself. Take care of yourself. Nobody knows what they're doing yet. Then day 35 hits. People aren't still saying, hey, it's okay. Take it easy. Be good to yourself. This is my concern. This is my concern. And if you translate that from someone saying that to me as the professional, will I be saying that to my students at day 35? Hey, we've been doing this for 35 days. Is there any reason why you still are not engaging? Now that I say that to you, I hope I'm not saying that at day 35. I hope I'm still saying, do what you can, and let's move from there.
Unless systems are having conversations that inhibit that is what we will default to. I don't get, no matter how shocking this pivot has been, our system is there just waiting to jump back in. So I think there's still, wherever you are in those sort of like, it's funny that graphic that you mentioned, it almost felt like a blend of the whole Sammer model with technology, like where you add in your technology integration and the process of grieving. Like I felt like that was like what was being put together, right? Like, what about if you're, what does the model look like where you're no longer bound to regret and deficit and scarcity? Like that's what's on the other side of this moment. You're saying 35 days from now, you're right. Are we going to still have those compassionate sort of conversations, both with parents, systems to educators to students with each other? Like, is there any, my guess, if I sort of map this out, and it's not because I'm pessimistic, it's unless we're having conversations right now that are exploring that what if, when we're left without a plan, we will default to the system. We will no longer be in the first get to know your rapport building stages, which right now are masked by our stress and anxiety, but we are in the get to know you. We're in the first couple of weeks of class. Because at some point, that conversation is going to happen where, it's no longer the compassion speaking because we're collectively all feeling the same suffering. It's going to be the system speaking, and it's like, okay, what is the process for penalty on this? And I think unless we're having the conversations right now that will inhibit that return to the old system, we will return to the old system. There are a lot of people that want to return to the old system. I mean, you only have to look to the States to a degree to where they're talking about opening up states and opening up jurisdictions and saying, we're going to go back to business as usual, because what will happen is being back to business as usual is what's going to make us feel comfortable, and it's what we need right now. But unless there's a plan, the business as usual is just going to be a rebound effect and more people are going to get sick. The rebound effect within education is that we're going to go back to the old system and possibly say to ourselves, why didn't we take that pause to sort of do a divergence and figure out how to exist in this next space? I've had that conversation. I've tried to start it. Like, we talked about it last week, I think. If it took us 3 weeks to pivot into our new system of distance learning, what will it look like to pivot back, and how much time do we need? I put out to Twitter yesterday a question. You got to pick your times right? You got to pick your time so that you actually generate some conversation. I put it out when I was thinking it. I should have put it in draft and posted it when I see people talking. But my question was basically the observation that in the last couple of years, school boards have really jumped on collecting school climate data. And the school climate data was, in my understanding, always with the belief of improving, not necessarily the adjacent effect might be that it improves learning, but what it does is it improves engagement, inclusion, belonging. We're going to figure out what we can do to help kids feel good about being at school. Curriculum maybe being one of the paths. So I put out there, I'm like, are school boards right now collecting more climate data? Because the school climate data right now, in this time of pivot, is, I believe, important to support whatever changes we hope to make next. Because if we jump out again, so I'm just waving, my wife's taking the car in. If we jump out again in September for similar circumstances, and we haven't taken the time to understand the impact of what happened in these 3 weeks, I'm stressed about that possibility. I'm stressed about not being able to. We'll have learned stuff, but really we also need the data to say how we can do things differently. And if I say that if we're going to arrive in September without having a bit of a systematic command of better decision making and more creative decision making, then if we have to go into a hybrid system in September because there's a COVID rebound, it's going to be just as difficult as it is right now. I'll double down on that. It'll be worse because we won't have 3/4 of a school year of rapport with the students. We're going to be starting entirely from scratch with a brand new roster of kids that we don't have the compassionate, that sort of like, we'll have compassionate ties, but we won't have the deeper levels of relationship that we have. Deep levels of relationship with our students right now, and look at what we're struggling with.
I was just thinking about what happens if we have to do this in September, right? And I'm considering, I currently teach grade 3, and if I'm teaching grade 3 again, I'm going to have kids from grade 2 come into my class, and I have no idea. Like, I don't know what their experience is with any of this. I'm going to have to find out from their teachers in this time. Let's say the school year's over. Let's say we're not going back this year, just for argument's sake. Who jumped in and participated? Who didn't participate at all?
Can I tweak you? Just so that, because that schools will not open again. School will continue, but the buildings won't open again. And I'll put my vote in. My vote is that I don't think the buildings are going to open again before the end of this school year.
Okay, so I need to say it. we find out that the buildings aren't opening again this year, and we're going to continue this emergency remote distance learning from now until June 30th. Well, between now and June 30th, we still need to make classes for next year. So I'm going to be getting together, I guess, virtually with my colleagues, and we're going to be making class lists and preparing for next year. And then we find out in August that the buildings are not opening in September. School still starts on this day. And here's your roster of kids. Can't look at an OSR. Need to talk to past teachers to find. And so my important thing is, hey, how many of these kids, how many of them were like relatively fluent? And then you've got 2 months away from this environment. Are kids going to remember how to log in? I guess we're going to have to create resources for them to remind them. The digital boot camp. This is how you log into the system. This is where you go. Like, I guess we'll have more time to prepare in a way. Like, if you're going to create stuff like that, you're going to create stuff like that. But here's my thing. If the buildings are still closed when the new year starts, I can already feel the anxiety. Don't worry, I'll put it away. But I can already feel the anxiety of the 8 million phone calls I'm going to have to make to parents I've never met before and kids that I don't know to say, hey, I'm your new teacher. On this day, you're going to log in to Google Classroom if you even used it last year, right? Because my kids are doing D2L this year. So when they go to grade 4, the grade 4 teacher might just be using Classroom. Guess what? My kids don't know how to use Classroom because I'm using D2L this year. So there's that whole thing. Like these are things that we're going to have to consider and talk about. And right now, I feel the anxiety because I've not given myself any preparation time. I've just jumped in. And of course, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to feel a little bit of stress, if you will. But I know that stress will go away as I become more fluent in whatever it is that I'm looking to become more fluent with. But
can I put one more thing in there?
Of course.
In the pot? So it's your anxiety and your stress, which it's palpable. I think it's almost immediate for some people. Like they're right there. You start talking about what the next school year is. I will say that maybe on one hand, that's maybe why there aren't broad-based conversations about it, because people are very much like they're right in the zone. We're right in the zone. We're not going to zoom out, because if we zoom out, what that looks like at the zoom out, when you take into account the models and the trajectory of COVID right now, like that's just a big picture that people are just going to get like bounced around in. So if we're aware that there's a triggering element to thinking about what would be happening next and how could I possibly plan and how could I ever make stuff happen in the amount of time that we could be asked to pivot, having the conversation now about this, or starting conversations around this right now, I think are important, so that by default, we don't just open-handedly start to use the government resources. Because one of the big picture things when you zoom out is our current government developing learn at home resources that are easy to access, now preloaded onto certain technologies that are being handed out to students. So they're seeding the ground for their next version of what distance learning is. That is happening simultaneously as us teachers in the virtual schools developing our version of it. Our version of it, it's compassionate, it's human-centered, it's aware, it's trying to be equitable, it's reciprocal, like everything that is making it so organic and parallel as possible to the real in-class experience is exactly what the learn at home isn't. And part of my concern is that teachers right now that are not educators, that are not feeling connected to a bigger picture conversation about how do we sustain this energy in what we're currently doing, because it is the better version of distance learning. Moving over purely to sort of like the learn at home and that pure, what is the equivalent of a digital correspondence course, is not, in my view, the best move right now. But I can see how individuals will say, I just can't develop this stuff at the speed that I need to do it. Whew. I'm happy that I can kind of go and use that other stuff, the stuff that's developed by the government. So it's this is a high tension point for me when I'm having conversations with teachers and trying to light them up to think creatively, to be comfort in the creativity, to share amongst each other, to keep pushing the relationship stuff, keep calling, keep whatever you're Google chatting, whatever you're doing with the kids. In talking with the kids this week, one of the things that popped up when I'm phoning is that they are really happy to hear someone's voice that isn't either the voice in their head or one of their parents. It just instantly gives them the feel, because of the way that we talk when we're talking as teachers, the tone, the connection, we're listening, we're sort of like, we're listening and then sort of like helping to get the kid to the conversation. Like everything that we do in that human moment is what they crave, even if they're not able to sort of articulate it. And I've had a few students that don't want me to get off the line. They're asking me more questions. They're talking, they're connecting. And I do feel I've pushed off this is where the day ends at 6, 7 o'clock, because there's more calling and more planning to do, right? But existing in that space, finding a way to exist in that space and to talk about what it means to exist in that space and to share our resources that we're creating in that space is all of the armament, the good armament and the good tools, and moving through that space of vulnerability to get the better armament and the better tools, fortification, vitamins, whatever you want to call it. It'll be the good stuff that in September, when there are people that are like, you know what, ooh, I'm going to jump, I'm going to take the learn at home stuff, I'm going to use it. I want to make sure that I'm part of kind of like a movement that's saying there's another version here. It feels, it feels a little bit like, it's kind of like that whole moment where some people are, it took a while for me to believe that, are you familiar with Ubuntu, like the operating system, that Ubuntu, I think, is it Dobby? Andrew Dobby is like, dudes, stop buying new tech. Let's just re-image ones with a nice, stable, open sourced operating system, and your old computers, we don't have to buy new computers. Convincing people that the open sourcing I have one downstairs that he helped me re-image. It's great. One of my laptops downstairs that the kids use, I re-image. It's an old Dell, but it works great. Never a headache. The one that's even older, that's a Windows-based, always headaches. So, but just a complaint about believing that something different that isn't like what you're doing could be good. That's the moment that we're in. The familiar system will be the learn at home. The familiar system will be what we're doing right now. The shared, open-sourced, community-sourced, collaborative, connected one that we're all suffering through right now. On one hand, if you just flip the edge of it a little bit, there's a really cool opportunity there for us to develop good stuff for September. And it might be, in my mind, the necessary kind of vitamins to keep us from entirely buying into the learn at home model. That was a rant. I'm going to say that. Thank you. There's my TED Talk.
Oh, nice. So
yeah, I'm going to claim that one.
Well, you just gave me an idea. I need to write down that at around 1 hour and 26 minutes, you did your TED Talk. And so what I'm going to do is, it'd be sweet if I could grab it and make it one of our decoded creative videos. You know how to do that?
Would you do that for me? I would love that. I would love to see how you would mess with that.
Oh my God, I've got some great ideas too.
Yeah. Do it, man. Do it.
Let's see if I can do it. Chris's TED Talk.
Clank Talk.
Yes, because I don't think we can use TED Talk, but
no, we don't. Let's not get into that. We'll call it.
We could call it your Theodore Talk or your Teddy Talk.
Teddy Talk.
There's ways around it. I've been feeling as well. that I've not been like playing with my creative side, and I think that's wearing me down too.
I've been intentional in that. I have been, but that's just the whole getting up real early, going for walks, and doing. I've been leaning on my poetry and kind of like strange photos heavily, and then I get back home usually around 8 a.m. after, and then the family's kind of getting up, and then I go upstairs and I go to work. So you got to get back to it, bro. You got to get back to it.
I do.
It's saving me. I'll say it's sustenance. It is saving me. I will get back to the house. The moments where I know I've done the work of letting the creative in is when I arrive back on my front step and I put my hand on the door. And it isn't until I put my hand on the door that I actually remember what my day is going to look like. I've completely lost my brain just from going sort of walking out in nature. But that's how I know I'm ready. That's how I know I'm ready. I'm ready to kind of like face what the day is going to be because I spent time away from thinking about what school was going to look like that day. Because as soon as you walk in the house, all the triggers are there. I walk into this room, my setup, my pens, my agenda, everything is just right here. It automatically just, like I said, the system's waiting for you. It is just waiting there for you. You got to fight it.
That's it. The system's waiting for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, anything else you want to drop before we let go of episode 26 of season 3?
27, bro.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. I was looking at the title. Episode 27, season 3. When's our next landmark episode?
Oh.
206?
You know what? No, it's whatever episode, which it's our season finale. Season finale. We have to decide. It's the season finale. And that's the crazy thing, right? Because our seasons tend to be based on school year. And what's messed up right now, like I'm seeing kids post work at 3:30 in the morning, 4:20 in the morning, 6 a.m. in the morning. No kids getting up at 6 a.m. to do work to hand it in. What they're doing is they're staying up all night to hand it in. And so many of my students are like, I don't know. And teachers are posting this too. I don't even know what time of day it is. What day is it? What day is it? And when your work is kind of flowing everywhere and your notifications are popping off all over the time, like the time and space continuum is broken right now. Karen, she had to go in. I mentioned before, she's an administrator. So she was in this week giving out technology. She was really stressed about being in there, and sort of just the whole idea of sort of breaking the social and physical distance bubble, stepping out. What does that mean? However, she said she really appreciated the cueing and triggering of being in and back at the school. She said, I felt a lot. She said, it was confusing. I felt pretty good about being back in the school because it right away, and again, this is the system. The system was there for you. She felt like her day was purposed and framed by a school again. So, man, like,
it's very interesting.
It's what like we're social animals, but we're also animals that learn patterns, right? And recognize patterns. And if that pattern gives you comfort, you're going to crave it. You're going to be drawn to it. Moth to a flame, baby. Moth to a flame. Maybe more hopeful than that, because I think actually that's not always. Moth to a lamp. Yeah, gotcha. Moth to a eco-friendly, non-incandescent light bulb. There we go. It's the light. Moth to the light.
That works for you?
Yeah, moth to the light.
Okay, buddy. Well, thanks for the chat. It was good talking to you.
I'll show the scribble.
I'd love to see it.
Oh, sorry. You had mentioned that so was the Easter egg in your video, it was one of two things. So the church video that you put together, was it the quick cut of the drone turning on, but it carried on and it filmed? Or was it the stationary 180 degree rotation? Was it one of those two?
It was the flying forward and then turning to the left and then fading out. That was the Easter egg for you.
I found it. That was good. I found it. That was good.
I have to tell you that I did learn a couple of things. So in my mind, I've been doing a lot of visualization of how the drone moves and the movement of the drone in connection with the sticks and how the sticks move and what the drone does in return.
Mhm.
And I discovered at the church, I did one of the stick movements that I thought would make the drone do something, but it didn't do what I had envisioned it to do, which tells me I just need to go outside more. And like today, I think I'm going to tell my son at some point after lunch, do you want to go for a walk? We're going to go for a walk and we're going to grab the drone and we'll park ourselves somewhere. And it does, even if it's windy out, I'll get it high enough that we can mess around with it and just play and not worry about the wind taking it away. But yeah, that was the Easter egg. So you finally watched the video. What did you think of it?
I loved it, man.
Okay.
It was cool. It was cool to see. I liked the getting a peek at things that, I mean, I've been to church. I liked getting a peek at stuff that you never really get close to.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the lighting was pretty good. Like the lighting was good, which I thought was cool too. It felt big. Like, I don't know. I think, is it the church right beside your school?
Yeah.
So it didn't strike me like that's a very big church. Now, I only saw it from one angle, but it felt big. You really created like this sense of space in it. The windows are beautiful. It made me wonder if you presented the windows. Are the windows like Stations of the Cross? Like, is there a specific story? Like,
there is a story
sequence.
I don't know if there's a sequence story, but I know there's a story for every window.
Yeah.
Right. If you look right between the windows are the Stations of the Cross. They're on wooden. If there was more light, and if we were going back to school, the building,
yeah,
I would have loved to have done something with the Stations of the Cross and then presented it. But
yeah, it was interesting when I saw like the shooting stained glass windows. And to get it looking spectacular struck me as a really difficult thing to do without having let's say like a professional processing post-edit kind of system to do, right? Because you're really dependent on the balance between, because front light makes everything look dull, and then backlight, you can get all the flaring going on. And colored glass, like there's just a really cool opportunity there to, I don't know how you do it. I just know that I've seen it, but colored glass, in order for it to, at the same time, for you to see the picture on the front, but for the colored glass to do what it needs to do, which is let light through so that it almost like looks glowing, right? So that has depth. Does that make sense? I just thought to myself, wow, that's a challenge to present that you would actually, to make that really look brilliant. But no, it's a cool video. I think whoever you've gifted it to can appreciate it just at face level. And if anyone was in there watching you do it and then saw the post, they'd have even probably a deeper appreciation of the number of sort of takes it takes to put together a 2-minute video. The music worked too. The music was good.
Right on. Thanks for checking it out. Finally.
Yeah, it strikes me though. It like I wondered, like, do some drone kits use gyroscopic movement as opposed to stick movement? So what that would mean is that you on the spot, you could actually like move your body and rotate the control and it would turn, which just strikes me like that's kind of closer to how some video game stuff, because I know like even the Switch downstairs, right? Like there are games that you just move the controller like this up and down and the camera moves with it. So if you're able to do that and turn your body, that's when you got to drop into the next drone level, right?
That'd be interesting.
Would that work for you filming, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm still in that weird stage of like, I'm not one with my drone yet. And I'll give you an example. When I was looking at
one with the drone, that's awesome.
We've talked about this, right? Like if somebody said they put a microchip in my brain and I'd be able to do all this amazing stuff because of the tech, I'd do it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the cool things when I was shooting one of the shots from the front to the back, I had to step out of the church proper. because I didn't want to be in the shot.
Mm.
So it's really cool because on the cutting room floor is the video of the drone as high up as it can be at the front of the church. And then you look right to the back and you see me standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk over to the door and I exit into the reception area. And then I was flying my drone without being able to see my drone.
Good job.
So I was behind the door.
That's the next skill set, man.
I was behind a door and I was flying it.
So you're just looking at the display on your...
I was just going by the display. And normally what I do, like when I was doing the shots of the stained glass windows, I was standing behind the drone and I was looking at the display, but I was also looking up, because sometimes it's really cool. Sometimes things look wrong on the display, but when you look at the drone's positioning, it looks like it should be where you think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also that like disconnection of trying to figure out, okay, I finally got on the screen what I want it to look like. And then you look up at the drone and the drone is not where you think it would be. So there's a lot of mind play, right? There's a lot of becoming in sync with that's what I mean. Like I'm not one with the drone yet. I need to truly understand its capability in terms of pushing it to the limit and knowing how far is too far and how much further I can go, and understanding it. And I felt that I felt really good about being inside, because I felt like my parameters were narrowed in and laser focused.
Mm-hmm.
What I would love to do, and I'm thinking about this, there are some churches that I know of that I would love to get into and do this. I would love to have the opportunity to go into the church and to, again, be alone and just try to find different perspectives in the building that most people don't see. Like my wife was blown away by some of the shots. She said, "Oh my God, I would never see this statue from this angle ever, because the opportunity never arises." Why would the opportunity arise to see certain things from certain vantage points? So she was blown away she was like, "Wow, I've never seen it like that or considered seeing it like that." Whereas now I feel like that's the story I want to tell.
That's the view that should, like, it's almost like you should see these spaces from these places. Like it's almost like giving people permission to consider new angles, new ways to look at the church.
Like even the simple shot of the drone looking straight down at the altar and the candles. That's
the priest, that's the pastor's view.
But it's his view, but it's not even, it's like from 5-6 meters up and straight down. Like
but no one gets to look down on that table. That's what I'm saying. That's what's so cool.
Right.
No one gets to look down. Like when you are in audience mode and you see the preacher look down at their Bible, or they go and they're sort of, putting the cloth over the chalice and the Eucharist and setting, like, their view down isn't something that you ever get. You're watching it at a distance. So to be able to look down, it was almost like cool secrets being revealed. And that's what made it, that raised the engagement level for sure. To be able to do it during a service or some sort of a performance, some sort of an event that, let's say, there wouldn't be the perception of being disrespectful or distracting. But I
don't think that would happen. Like I don't think
to see it during a service, to have some of your shots when there's bodies in the building, that would be cool. And you've totally test driven the shot lines. That's what's cool. You're going to be releasing the video. So you will have that video at some point where you will have it actually inside the space with the people. I believe that.
I don't see that happening for a number of different reasons, but I want to share with you. I took some risks. So I made the video, and I shared it with you. And I'm always open to your critical eye. Like there's certain people you show them something and you don't want to hear bad news from them. You don't want them to be honest with you. You and I don't have that. Like, I think it's fair to say, would you agree?
Yes.
Like if I show you some of my creative work, you will push back, and maybe that's too strong of a word. You will ask questions, and you will ask questions, and you'll say, why'd you do this? And did you consider this? And it's cool. I don't mind that at all. I actually appreciate that. So I took a risk, and it was one of these funny things. It's like, so on Instagram, I follow a range of people, but a couple of people I follow are photographers for the Prime Minister of Canada. And I really enjoy their creativity, their work, their photography. Now, I don't know, one of them I've bantered back and forth with more than the other one. And I loved his photography. So he was with the Prime Minister. I don't know why he's not with the Prime Minister anymore, but he was with the Prime Minister for a certain amount of time, and he was one of the photographers. And he had posted a picture of a drone shot in Ottawa. So I messaged him. I said, bro, you have a drone? Like, I didn't know. He's like, yeah, I've got a drone, but I don't really get it out much. I should, whatever. So we went back and forth about what kind of drone he had and stuff. And I said to him, hey, I just recently put together this project. I would love for you to see it and hear what you have to say. And it was a really cool moment, because for me, it was like, I'm taking a risk with a creator who he's established himself. Like, if you're going to take pictures for the Prime Minister of Canada, then you're at a level of proficiency with the work you do, in my opinion, because the whole world sees your work. That's part of the whole world sees your work. So I said, this is what kind of drone I have. I've been playing with it, and I had this idea about taking shots in his church. I'm going to send it to you. And he's had some really nice things to say. He didn't really say anything negative or critical, maybe because he doesn't know me, but I was like, hey, whatever you say is whatever you say. But it was really cool. One of his things was, imagine if you had shot the drone in the church and there was a choir singing. And now the drone doesn't take audio, but he was like, how cool would it be to record simultaneously as you're flying your drone? There's a choir singing live, and you're capturing their singing, and then you're mixing it into your drone shots. Drone in the church doing its thing while the choir's singing, and you have all that. And I was like, wow, it's a cool layer. But and it was really, he was very he asked some questions which were cool that I didn't think of. He asked some questions and I answered his questions, and it was really interesting. He came at me from so what was the purpose of this? And I was like, cool video I wanted to make. You know, and kind of like hey, priest, this is for you now. You can, this is your church, do what you want with it. But he was like, what about, he looked at it from a perspective of conservation. Like, this is what the church looks like now. What if something happened to it? Or what if they wanted to do something in a part of the church where they couldn't get visual access easily? You've just provided that for them. Like, you've provided historical artifact. You've also provided like a baseline for conservation. I was blown away. I had never considered any of that.
That's very cool.
So now I'm on the tip of, there's a church I have in mind. There are priests that work in that church that I think might be open to this. And if I show them the first video and say to them, hey, listen, I did this in this church. Please call your brother priest and ask about me. I think he would vouch for me in terms of
just passion projects.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the other thing too. This is an opportunity that's going to go away quick. Like, when COVID ends, everybody's back in the churches. Nobody's going to give me time. Like, they're going to be doing stuff again. Like, so it's kind of an interesting time to be able to get access to a space that I'm not going to have access to if people are going to allow it. Like, it's just not going to happen, you know, because I think when COVID ends, sure, they let me in, but they're going to stand there and watch, which is fine, but it's not the same as me being in the space alone.
It's interesting how the drone work in itself allows access to sort of spaces that aren't easily accessible, just in the general sense. And our current quarantining is allowing you access to a project that wouldn't necessarily be accessible. I like the opportunity. I like it. That's cool.
That's how I feel. And like the gold standard would be to, you know, to do the Bishop's Church in Hamilton. But that's like, I would love to do a few more Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge churches of priests that I'm aware of or connected to, and then go from there.
A question that might be worth exploring is whether or not, so the next church that you do, finding out whether or not they have any archival audio that you could use. So you actually could use their choir's music as background music.
That would be epic. That's a great.
I'm imagining they probably have. Like, I mean, many churches have been kind of doing, you know, something digital. I mean, even if they're just have some sort of a recording of some singing that happened in that church, I think that would season up that video in a way. It's just one more deeper connection. Someone that's seeing that video that's not appreciating it as a drone video, but as a love letter to the church, they're going to sit there and they're going to think to themselves, oh my God, I know that song. I remember that song being sung, right? It's almost the older, the better would be kind of cool. Like some of those stuff, if they have stuff that's like on tape, reel to reel kind of stuff. Anyways, just again, something, me chiming in on your creative space.
No, it's, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening. I didn't mean for us to go another like 15 minutes, but it's cool. You brought up the drone footage I thought I would share. And now it's kind of like my faith and my creative side coming together to do something that at the end of the day can belong to somebody else, but I know that it was my hands that made it happen, and that's cool. Like, it's just part of, you know, building fluency. And like I said, like, I'm being enclosed is even more cool because when I'm outside, I fire that thing up into the air. I literally feel like I'm taking a baseball and just throwing it as hard as I can, except I've got the power to bring it right back to me. And I think being in a finite space, I have to think harder because I can't be crashing that thing into the ceiling. You know what I'm saying? So,
dude, that is one of the elements that they talk about that can fuel creativity. You have constraints and you have scarcity. So constraints are useful, and having to sort of create something inside that box doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't mean that you like there's to sort of be told to know that you don't want to smash it into the wall doesn't limit the shots that you take. In my mind, it opens up the opportunity to think about, well, what's on that list that I wouldn't normally go for, and go for that instead. And I love what you said, that turn of phrase, faith in my creativity. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to kind of like title what this project represents. Faith in my creativity. Like, it represents your courage to do something, but it also represents the bigger picture of representing this church in a really cool light. It's nice, man.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. Here, I'll show you what I drew.
Yes, I want to see it. It's some type of vegetation growing from the soil. That was a total dad, like, get out of the room, kid. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
It just at the heart, you'll see it probably when I post it up. In one of the bottom corner, the root system is my tribute to Clank. But you might have to zoom it to see it. Yeah.
I can't believe that the computer's dead.
It may come back to life. I've said it before, but we go back through our 3 years, and there was at least an episode every 5 or 6 where it's like Clough's computer fought back, right? So this has been a slow death, I guess, but we'll see.
Okay, so I'm going to let you go, and
Okay.
I'm so looking forward to this video creeping out into. I can't wait to try to play with the TED Talk thing. I'm really looking forward to that. I've got some ideas. Okay.
Cool, man. Chat you later. Probably later on today, sometime tomorrow. Take care of yourself.
You too. See ya. Oh boy.